Thank you all so much for joining us this evening for the recruitment information call for prospective applicants to the Bronfman Fellowship. It's great to have you with us. Thank you for making time and for your interest. My name is Becky Voorwinde. I'm the Executive Director of the Fellowship, and more importantly, I'm also an alumna of the program. And this evening we are hoping to really cover a wide spectrum of details that we hope will be useful to you in deciding whether you are going to apply, which we hope you will, as well as you prepare your application. And we are joined tonight by 3 individuals, in addition to myself, who will at various points share on the call. One of those is Sammy Potter, who is a fellow from 2 years ago and who is now a freshman at Stanford. And Sammy is going to share a bit later on some of the highlights of his Bronfman experience. We're also joined by Mira Kittner, who is from Sammy's cohort from Bronfman as well. She's a freshman at Barnard right now, originally from the Bay Area. And likewise, she'll share. And the voice you heard, if you joined right away, the voice you heard was Ava Charne. Ava is our administrative director, and she's also going to share a bit about the application process this evening. As Ava noted, just a few housekeeping points. We're going to start the call off with all of you who are not the presenters on mute. However, we have left ample time in this agenda for the evening for question and answer, and we will then open the lines. In addition, if you would like to send any questions to Ava, that's Ava, that's A-V-A .Charne, C-H-A-R-N-E @bronfman.org. You're welcome to send questions, and we'll take those and respond to those in the Q&A as well, since we could have you know, several hundred people on the call, so we know that sometimes opening these lines can get a little bit crazy, but we really welcome your questions and hope we can answer all of them this evening. So with that, I wanted to just open and share a little bit more about the fellowship, about this program. We hope you've had a chance to look at our website, to watch our recruitment video. If you haven't, I certainly encourage you to do that. There's a lot of really useful information that paints a picture of what this program is about. But I'm going to start by sharing a quick story, which is my own experience when I was a 17-year-old, and this was before there were recruitment videos for the Bronfman Fellowship or a website for the Bronfman Fellowship. And I had a paper brochure that I remember looking at. And what stood out to me, which I believe is still such a hallmark of this program, was a sentence in that paper brochure, which said that the conversations go well into the night. And in a nutshell, I think that encapsulates what this fellowship experience is so unique for, which is that this is a space for learning's sake. And we select a cohort of young people who enjoy deep and interesting conversation with one another, who are passionate about making a difference in the world, who are curious about others, and who are also interested in exploring Jewishness together with other young Jews who might think and believe and practice quite differently than them. And that kind of conversation well into the night really, I think, encapsulates what happens in the Bronfman experience. And so I wanted to just start with that little image. The program was founded in 1987 by Edgar Bronfman, Zichrono Livracha. And Edgar's vision, which we've really stayed true to all these years later, this cohort that we're recruiting for at the moment would be our 33rd cohort, was a vision that said that, first of all, the future is in the hands of young people. And we believe that young people have the power to transform the future, and that young people who are able to confidently express their identity and have a passion for Jewish learning and for making a difference in the world can have a significant impact and ripple effect in shaping the future as they so desire and as they so need. And so our vision is to select a cohort of North American fellows 26 young people a year, as well as a separate cohort of Israeli fellows, 20 fellows a year, who we believe have the potential to really make a difference in the world, and who we believe by starting early at age 17 can begin a lifelong dialogue and sense of connection and respect across a wide range of differences Jewishly. And really the idea of our version or our way of understanding Jewish pluralism has a lot to do with the idea of being able to see the world through a lens broader than one's own, being able to see Jewishness through a lens broader than one's own. And a lot of our program and the content of our program aims to provide that expansive lens, as well as a real space for exploring and asking the personal questions that matter most in your life. So a few highlights are just a way of describing our fellowship experience, our fellowship year. Fellows begin their experience the summer before their senior year with first an orientation on the East Coast in the US, then a trip together to Israel for 5.5 weeks, which I'll explain a little more about in a moment, and then followed by seminars monthly, virtual seminars monthly during senior year, and a chance to continue to build connections amongst the fellowship cohort as well as with our faculty and learn together. And then a closing seminar in the spring of senior year that is in the DC, Maryland area, and that's focused on, in particular, both culminating the experience of the fellowship year, as well as questions of what does it mean to be a Jew in America today, and how does one make sense of the way that being Jewish influences your American identity, and also how Jewishness itself is influenced because of American values and American experiences. So it's a very rich and interesting seminar. And then our program really, we see it as a continuing experience beyond that through the college years and into a really robust and amazing alumni community of both Israelis and North American alumni who together are really the shapers of the future, the change makers, the moral voices, the cultural creators, the deep thinkers, the community builders of their generation. And so it's really a profound and exciting community to be a part of. The fellowship summer, which is the most significant immersive experience of the fellowship cycle, has a few important components to note. I'm really going to leave a lot of this to Mira and Sammy because I think that more than anything, you're going to get the most out of hearing directly from other fellows about their experiences. But just to share a few highlights about the fellowship experience, our program in Israel is not a tour program, nor is it an advocacy program. Our program is really an experience where there's an opportunity to engage in deep conversation and deep learning. We have 4 faculty members who are rabbis and educators who together reflect a wide spectrum of Jewish identity themselves and help model pluralism in their own team dynamic as educators, who teach a wide canon of Jewish texts and modern texts, history texts, philosophy texts, Talmud, commentaries, poetry, short stories, really a very, very wide spectrum of materials that serve as an entry point into really existential questions and into the kinds of things that matter most in how we live our lives. What does it mean to live a meaningful life? What does it mean to build community? What does it mean to be a functioning member of society? These questions, we believe, are really rich and exciting to explore through these Jewish texts and in conversation amongst a group of peers. The cohort of fellows is a cohort that also spans a wide spectrum of identities and backgrounds and even geographies. We'll get into that a little bit later as to who are we looking for as a fellow and what's the fellow composition of the group look like. But in addition to having these faculty during the fellowship summer and studying with them and also getting to be engaged in conversation with the faculty and fellows, fellows also get the chance to hear from speakers who are the kinds of people that you see in the headlines, or the kinds of people whose books or writing is helping to really create today's modern Jewish culture, and also make history in relation to what's happening in Israel. And fellows get an intimate opportunity to hear from those speakers, to meet with those speakers, to have really frank conversations with those individuals, because we are such a small cohort each year of 26 fellows. As well as the fellows have a chance to build community amongst one another, to have Shabbat together, to sing together, to learn about one another through hiking, through physical activity, through other experiences that build a group dynamic. And additionally, fellows have the chance to get to know a cohort of Israeli peers. We have one extended encounter during the fellowship summer for our Israeli fellows who have a separate concurrent program, and our American fellows to come together. It includes also a cross-cultural experience of a homestay where our American fellows have the opportunity to stay in the homes of the Israeli fellows. And it's really often a highlight for people, and a real chance to connect to like-minded, talented peers. And so, you know, that's a little taste of the program in a nutshell. We are really excited about each new year of fellows, in part because the community of fellows themselves are really the centerpiece of this experience. And what I mean by that is not only that the tone and content of the fellowship can shift depending on the group itself, but also that we really are learner-centered in the educational experience that fellows have on Bronfman. And the questions and ideas that most animate a cohort in one year might not be the same questions that most animate a cohort the next year. And our team are expert educators who have the ability to bring different ideas and different texts and different facilitated conversations into the mix based on the group and the group dynamic and the group's interests. So, you know, it always changes, and that's one of the things that makes this such a unique and vibrant and alive learning experience. It's not, there's no homework, there's no sitting in a traditional classroom. This is truly a discussion-oriented and deep set of learning experiences that we offer. So I'm going to share some more a little bit after, but I want to hand this over to Mira for her to share a little first of where she came from, in the sense of how did she hear about Bronfman, and what was her experience prior to being in the program, as well as to share a few examples of what stands out to her about her Bronfman experience, things that she thinks those of you who are prospective applicants may find useful to know or important to know in her own experience. And I'm going to hand it over to Mira now.
Thanks, Becky. Hi, everyone. I am so glad that I get a chance to join this call and share a little bit about myself and my Bronfman experience. It's hard to believe, but 2 years ago, I was on the same conference call as a prospective applicant. So for all of you current juniors on this call, I remember being in your place, and I'm so excited for you to apply if you're interested. First, I'd like to start and tell you a little bit about myself. As Becky said, my name is Mira Kittner, and I was a 2017 fellow 2 summers ago. I'm from Berkeley, California, but I'm currently a freshman at Barnard in New York City on the other coast. And as you can imagine, it's really hard for me to distill my Bronfman experience into a couple minutes, but I'd love to share some moments that stood out to me and have really made a lasting impact on how I carry myself in the world as a Jewish person, as a learner, and as a community member. First of all, as someone who attended Jewish day school my entire life, I went to Oakland Hebrew Day School and then to Jewish Community High School in the Bay Area. I had a pretty extensive Jewish learning background in a classroom setting, but spending 5 weeks in Israel with the Bronfman Fellowship really provided me with a new and different way to approach Jewish learning. It was quickly apparent to me when we had our first tech study that, like Becky said, Bronfman Fellowship is a community of people who are dedicated to learning for the sake of learning. And at least in my school experience, this is something that was really often hard to find. And Bronfman, for me, was a space with no grades, no desks, no right questions or right answers. It was really a space to ask these big questions and engage with texts and ideas and people who were curious and motivated and really excited to discuss their and experiencing this like self-motivated, open-minded, very expansive kind of study really changed my perspective on the possibility of Jewish learning and the meaning that I could draw from it. One moment in particular that I want to share that has struck me and continued to impact me ever since was an activity we did as a group in Israel where we explored our personal paradoxes, or in other words, like aspects of our identity that sometimes seem to come in conflict with other aspects of our identity. And I remember at the time, I was thinking a lot about how can I be a changing individual and also be part of a community, or how do I develop a strong sense of self and also be in relationship with other people, which, to be honest, as I'm saying this now, it's a question that has resurfaced for me since I've entered college. And yeah, so sitting in the circle and hearing everyone ask these big questions was really powerful for me. And I looked at my journal. Everyone on Bronfman keeps a journal. And I looked back at mine this morning in preparation for this call. And I actually wrote down a couple of the other paradoxes that people voiced in our circle. And I think they're really telling to kind of the conversations that emerge over Bronfman. So one of them was, how can I forge my own Jewish path while also staying rooted in my family's tradition? Or how can I be open to change if I believe in tradition? If I don't believe in God, how can I follow halakha? So these are just snippets of much larger conversations and studies that we had together. But that moment of hearing people share about themselves and asking these big questions to the group was really new for me, and a way to like put our questions in conversations with others. And to me, that is a really unique foundation for having and creating a meaningful and vulnerable deep community, which I found on Bronfman. The second experience that really stood out to me was spending Shabbat on Bronfman. And as you can imagine, bringing 26 young adults from really different Jewish backgrounds together to celebrate Shabbat sparked some pretty unique discussions. It was really beautiful to see people share aspects of their home traditions, whether they had spent Shabbat more traditionally their entire lives, or whether they were still figuring it out, or whether they had never lit candles in their entire life. I personally, at the time, was someone who was keeping Shabbat more traditionally on Bronfman, and it was really meaningful for me to share my practices with others and also experiment with new customs in a way that felt very comfortable for me. And this type of intentionally constructed, pluralistic Jewish community really impacted the kinds of Jewish communities I've set out for myself in college and hopefully beyond my college years. And I can really say so much about the fellowship. I would be more than happy to talk with anyone offline about application questions or about questions about my experience. But for now, I'm going to pass it along to Sammy to share a little bit about himself and his experience.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sammy Potter. As Becky mentioned at the beginning of this call, I'm a current freshman at Stanford, and you might hear it in my voice right now, but I've caught a bit of the freshman flu. So please excuse if I'm not exactly if my voice isn't up to par. In pretty stark contrast to Mira, I came into Bronfman having lived my entire life as a very secular Jew. My synagogue that I had been to a few times is like over an hour away from my house. It just wasn't really something that was accessible. I'm from Maine, by the way, and as I think you might be able to imagine, there's not too many Jews. I was one of the only Jews in my school, actually. I found out about Bronfman from one of the only other Jewish families in in my town. I think that he had been part of the first Bronfman Fellowship, and passed information about the program along to me, which is pretty cool bookends, being part of the 30th cohort. So as I mentioned, I came in very secular and kind of worried about what my impression and what my place in the group would be, I would say. I sort of had this model of what other American Jews were like, that kind of was challenged right away. I felt as though I was nervous rather, to be not accepted as a Jew, really, just because I hadn't practiced in a traditional sense. But what I found from Bronfman right away was just how welcoming the community was to me in the. Hello?
Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I think I got muted there for a second. What I found right away was that I was welcomed to the community, and the program really met me at where I was, if that makes sense. To move on to some experiences that I had that really kind of highlight that. I think one of the best ones was, as Mira mentioned, the first Shabbat. I was really curious as to how others practice Shabbat, and was open to hearing about other ways that people had done it, because I had the only way I really practiced Shabbat at home was spending a night hanging out with my friends, all of whom were non-Jews. So I really enjoyed that first Shabbat, seeing the way that some of my friends in the program were waking up early to go pray. Some were not exercising that day. Everyone had their own kind of variation specific to what their family had done, or maybe they were trying other things. But I kind of each Shabbat tried a different synagogue, tried a different set of practices, and just felt out what felt like might be a viable option for me if I did want to change any of my practices or engage with my Jewishness any further at all. And what I found was, with the program that was so beautiful, I would say, is that all that pushing to try something new came because of a space that was opened up for me. It wasn't anything that was forced on me. So if there's anybody who's listening who is kind of coming from a similar place of being a bit worried that they're not that they wouldn't be accepted in the community because they haven't practiced in a traditional sense of American Jewry, I would just put that worry to rest right away, and that's what I figured out over the first Shabbat. The second kind of experience that I want to talk a little bit about is the homestay. Becky touched a little bit on it, and I'm sure that some folks will have some questions about it. But like a lot of people, I was quite nervous about it. I had only been abroad a few times before, didn't speak any Hebrew, and was kind of nervous to spend so much time with one individual family and other folks who I had never met before. And to this day, I stay in really good touch with the family that I stayed with. And it was amazing to me, I think, not so much just about how much of a personal connection I was able to build with them, but to a greater extent, the cultural awareness that I was able to grow from spending time with them. Again, I had a Shabbat with them, and it was fascinating to see how they practiced. But even further than that, their family dynamic was very different from the one that I had grown up with at home. Not necessarily that was indicative of the Israeli culture as a whole, but it was really fascinating for me to see what that culture was like, as well as what the family was like. And the warm vibes that they gave me are something that I really treasure to this day. And yeah, so that's kind of the second experience. And then I just wanted to add, going forward a little bit, I've already felt really engaged by the alumni community. So I think when Becky talks about that, it really take it to heart is what I would say, because it really is there. There's so many resources. I've reached out to quite a few alumni who have similar interests as me, and who are doing pretty amazing things in their field, and I've gotten incredible advice from a lot of them, and formed a lot of great relationships already. So I just want to make sure that's something that's really emphasized, because I've already felt like I've reaped a lot of the benefits of that.
Great, thank you, Mira and Sammy. And as those of you that are listening, we're shortly going to open up for Q&A, and when we do, certainly you can direct your questions directly at them, because as you can tell, they have a lot to share, and more firsthand and recent experience. One of the things that Sammy noted when he was talking about his experience of Shabbat, and that the fellowship, from his experience of coming from a more secular background, made space for him to be himself. And I want to also note for those folks on the call who are coming from Orthodox backgrounds, from observant Shomer Shabbat backgrounds, that we also work very hard to make sure that the experience is one that is supportive and encouraging and comfortable for Orthodox and halachically engaged students to maintain their halachic observance. And the program itself, and when I say the word halacha, for those of you that are not familiar with the term, that's Jewish law and traditional Jewish law. And we always have several faculty members of our faculty team who are also observant in that way and who are Orthodox, as well as faculty members who come from different identifications, more secular perspectives. And we do everything we can to ensure that no one will ever feel that their values, but not just their values, their commitments and their religious observance is in any way compromised or pushed. And if there are more questions when we have the Q&A around that, we can get into some more details. We also have some materials that are particularly helpful for Orthodox applicants. If you're interested, you can email Ava, and we can share with you some more details and a Q&A for how we ensure that Orthodox students are comfortable in this experience, because that's a priority for us as a pluralistic program, just as it's a priority that students from the widest spectrum of backgrounds are comfortable. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Ava, who's going to share a bit about the application process, and then I'll say a few more words about what we're looking for in applicants, and then I think we'll probably be ready to open up for the question and answer.
Okay, so as Becky said, I'm Ava Charne, and I'm the Administrative Director for this program. I have 30+ years working with the Bronfman Fellowship. I handle all details of recruitment, including technical questions, and reminding people if there are missing pieces of their application. I arrange interviews. I'm the primary contact for the families throughout the fellowship year. In other words, anything you need, just get in touch with me and I'll get you what you need. I'll reach out and get you the right information. Now, regarding the pieces of application, we ask for 2 essays of 300 words, 2 letters of recommendation from individuals who know you well, at least one of which must be from a guidance counselor, school principal, or teacher. They do not need to know anything about your Jewish background. The important thing is that they know you well, because we know there have been some applicants who felt that they got their applications from somebody who was, a very important person, but the recommendation wasn't as meaty. They didn't know the kids so well, and that worked to the applicant's disadvantage. The important thing is that they know the applicant well. We do not require any sort of standardized test scores, and the transcript we require is just through grade 10, because we do know that in the middle of the year, people get more grades, and we're just interested in the transcript through grade 10. What I want to say about the academic transcript is that it's to learn about an applicant's academic pursuits and course load. We do not believe that grades and GPA reflect a candidate's sophistication of thought, character, or the ability to contribute to and benefit from the fellowship. Far more important and interesting are the personal essays and letters of recommendation, which offer a platform for applicants to tell their stories, express their unique interests, and describe their relationship to community. Some important facts is the deadline is November 30th. Which is earlier than in previous years. So that's important to note because it's already October 11th. All applications are reviewed by more than one reader before a decision is made whether to invite them to an interview. All applicants will be notified via email in the middle of January if they will be invited to an interview. Our interviews are in person. We try to have about 60 finalists, and the interview times and locations are assigned. We conduct interviews in 3 hub locations, New York, Chicago, or LA. We're planning our interviews from March 6th through March 14th. And for those interviewees who need to travel to attend their interview, please know that if cost is a barrier to participating in our interviews, we provide financial aid for travel.
Great.
I believe, Becky, that's, yeah.
Yeah,
and
that's fantastic.
And I'm going to paste some of the questions that I'm hearing that will go to you, Becky, and you can decide how to handle it, okay?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ava.
And yes, one other thing I want to say is when we get to the questions, we're going to unmute everyone, but please do mute yourself if you're not speaking so we can hear each other. Okay.
Thanks, Ava.
1 second. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Ava. So as Ava noted, the deadline is November 30th. There is still time to start an application, and there's really ample time to be able to put one together and submit. So hope everyone feels they can take a deep breath because you've got time. And also, I just wanted to mention that there is a PDF of the application online. In order to complete the application, you do need to do so through the online portal that we have. However, if you want to spend some time looking at the questions on the application, there is a PDF on our website of the application in the apply section. If anyone has difficulty finding it, again, you're welcome to email Ava and she can make sure that you can get that link. So just a few more sentences about who are we looking for. Hopefully by now you're already starting to get a taste of who we're looking for, and my hope is that it's you. Or your child or your student or whomever is on this call tonight that knows great young people. The kind of fellow and the kind of person that's going to thrive is someone who has deep intellectual curiosity and enjoys learning. The kind of person that we're looking for is someone who is articulate and able to express their views and their background and their experiences, but equally able to really listen to other people's stories, experiences, identities, and has a curiosity, not just intellectual curiosity on, texts or ideas, but actually has a curiosity about other people. That's crucial because this is a fellowship experience that is a group experience, and this is a community that we're building not only amongst the cohort of fellows, but as Sammy alluded to, amongst an entire alumni community, and that's really something that I want to stress. Additionally, we're looking for people who are passionate, and in that sense, passion might look like a lot of different things for different people at age 16, 17. It might be a real commitment to a specific hobby or interest. It might be actually the exact opposite, but just someone who's hungry to try lots of different things and has many different interests and experimentation around different activities. Someone who is a community builder who steps up and looks to take on where they see opportunities to take on responsibility. And again, when I say that, I'm not necessarily talking about exclusively being the president of a club or you know, a number of different titles. There are so many ways that people can take on responsibility. We've had fellows over the years who talked about the, you know, informal book club that they organized amongst their friends every month, or, you know, other ways that are not necessarily about titles or accolades, but are really reflective of the ability to lead, the ability to take responsibility and take ownership. I also just want to emphasize, not every fellow is an extrovert, and sometimes that can feel intimidating for any of you who consider yourself an introvert, in the sense that a group of 26 would not function at all if everybody in the group was, you know, deeply outspoken and extroverted in various ways. So we are looking for different kinds of personalities, and so, you know, some of our fellows are passionate about math and science. Others are more passionate about the humanities. Some are really involved in politics. Some are involved in robotics. There's just such a wide spectrum. In relation to Jewish identity, we are looking to build a cohort where the group itself reflects the widest spectrum of the North American Jewish community. We have fellows who come from households where one parent is Jewish. We have fellows who come from intercultural or interracial backgrounds. We have fellows who have exclusively spent all their life in Orthodox communities in the sense of Jewish education, summer camps, their family, their extended family, and Bronfman is a totally different experience in that regard. We have fellows who come from pluralistic environments, pluralistic day schools, as Mira noted for herself. The point being that that all backgrounds make for the rich fabric of the Jewish future and the Jewish world we live in, and really reflect the pluralism that we believe fellows will benefit from encountering one another, and again, seeing things through new eyes and through different eyes. So I'm gonna sort of stop there, and if Mira and Sammy have any other thoughts they wanted to bring in about who we're looking for, or any last tips before we open up the lines in relation to the application and preparing the application, I certainly welcome that as well. Mira and Sammy, if either of you want to say anything about that.
Yeah, I'd love to add one thing. Mira, feel free to jump in, or tell me what you think about this. I kind of felt that one thing that was, I mean, everyone was very different, and came from, as you mentioned, Becky, an assortment of various backgrounds. I felt that one thing that was really consistent among successful relationships that were built between fellows, though, was openness to at least hearing each other out and really empathizing with where each other were coming from. I think that's what really made things so special to me, and creates a really wonderful community vibe as well.
I would agree completely.
Great. So as Ava's starting to open up the lines for the Q&A, just want to reiterate what Ava noted, which is please mute yourself. You can do so as you would on any other call using your phone's muting ability. It'll make it much easier if you're not planning to ask a question. And join us in the messiness of opening up many lines, in the sense that if you are going to ask a question, it's okay if you talk over someone. We'll figure out how to navigate the politeness of it. And I'm going to just start with two questions that did get asked already via email. One is, how many applicants are there typically? And the answer is, our application pool usually ranges from about 250 applicants to 300 plus. It varies year to year. And then how long is, I'm not sure exactly what this question actually means. How long is the homestead for? I think the question, the homestay. How long is the homestay for? The homestay usually is 3 nights over the course of a weekend, basically. And then the time additionally with our Israeli fellows, where we have a joint seminar, is about 6 days total for time together. So The fellowship summer, which is the 5.5 weeks in Israel, includes essentially just over a week of time with our Israeli fellows in the middle of that experience. And at that, I'm going to open it up. So if you have a question, please feel free.
Hi, this is a question for Mira. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi.
You mentioned something that was really interesting, and it was about dialogue. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What was the content, and then was there some sort of action plan after the dialogue, or was it just sort of dialogue, conversation, and you, that was sort of internal growth, or was there, so twofold. One was content, and two, was there an action plan post-dialogue, if that makes sense?
Sure, yeah. If I understand your question correctly, Bronfman is dialogue in many different forms, and that dialogue happens between more informally, one-on-one with your roommates at night, or facilitated by some of the amazing teachers on the program, or between a larger group of fellows, or in a smaller subset of fellows in what we call a journal group. And that dialogue can take many forms. Like sometimes it's reflecting on our own Jewish identity, or engaging with a text and talking about what feelings that evokes for us. They're always like very multi-layered and really stem from the group's curiosity. As Becky said, like dialogue takes on a different form depending on the personalities and questions from the group. And in terms of your question about action, I really appreciate that question. And one thing we talked a lot about on Bronfman was how to translate these big ideas and big questions we have back home into our real lives. And for me, it was really powerful to be supported in the transition back home, in the sense that I really felt like once I left the 5 weeks in Israel, like these questions were still on my mind, and I was able to talk to people about choices throughout the year in how to bring those questions like into my concrete daily experience.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so this one's for Mira and Sammy. So you talked about how you were exposed to a wide variety of diverse perspectives on the Bronfman Fellowship. And I was wondering, I know this is a hard question to answer, but which were the most significant changes that you noticed in how you connected with your Judaism and society after returning from the summer fellowship experience?
Mira, you wanna go first, or?
Sure. So the question was, how did I connect? Sorry, can you repeat it one more time?
Sure. So what were the most significant changes you felt in how you connected with Judaism and American society after versus before the Bronfman Fellowship?
Great, thank you. For me, I think that this question is really on an individual basis. Like every different person on Bronfman had a different connection to their Judaism, and obviously it played out in different ways throughout the fellowship year. I personally, on Bronfman, I left with an understanding that my Judaism is not something that needs to stay the same my entire life. And for me, that was like really liberating to feel like the way I was raised, what I was taught, what I was practicing in the moment was a kind of Judaism that could be open to change and experimentation. And part of that was just seeing the different models of the 26 fellows and the faculty, and just hearing how diverse their experience with Judaism was inspiring to me upon return, and thinking about like what communities I want to join, and kind of coming to an understanding that we can try out a lot of communities before we find a community that's best for us.
I think for me, I mentioned a little bit of this, but I sort of had a preconceived notion of what American Jewry was like supposed to be, and that I was kind of on the outside and not inside the mainstream of it. And I think what I found from the Bronfman community most was that there wasn't, one way to be Jewish in America, and the ways that I wanted to be Jewish, if they were to be more robust after Bronfman, which they have been to some extent, that was okay. I didn't have to fit a specific mold, and regardless that I would be accepted as part of the Jewish diaspora and part of the larger Bronfman and larger Jewish community as well. So I don't know if that it was any like world shifting perspective, but more a kind of greater understanding of the diversity itself.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
I was curious how much of the program is learning in either in like a baby drash setting or in a lecture setting, and how much of it is just like fun summer activities, if that's part of it too, like going to the beach or playing sports or activities like that.
That's a great question. I'll say a little about that, and then again, Mira and Sammy, feel free to add to this. So the program, every day we do start our morning with a opportunity to learn with our faculty members. Our faculty members choose to teach mini courses that are designed by our faculty based on essentially what they most love teaching. And one of the pieces of our philosophy is the idea that there isn't sort of a here's how you start Judaism 101 from A to Z, but rather that the best way to engage with Jewish learning and with these ideas is to dive in, and to dive in with a teacher who's passionate about the material they're teaching. So every day does start with that kind of learning. After that, there isn't really a template for how each day then is likely to follow. Usually, again, I'm going to give some rough sketches. Usually, probably 2, maybe 3 times a week, there might be another text-oriented learning session that's with the whole group, often really relying heavily on what we call chavruta, which is paired learning. But in addition to that, a lot of the rest of the content is a mix of some outdoor experiences such as hiking or going to the beach, but it's not the majority of the experiences, a mix of free time, and then more significantly, opportunities to hear from speakers. Where possible, we always go to hear those speakers in their in situ, kind of in their location, so that there's also a lot of sight, sounds, and feels that are associated. We do a lot of what I'd call touring, but not touring in a traditional sense. We rarely go around with a tour guide, but we might go to Machane Yehuda, which is the markets in Jerusalem, and explore and explore with faculty members often leading the way some of the questions of what kinds of cultures are we seeing in our midst, and maybe we might have some form of an activity that allows us to explore that space. Maybe we'll have read at some point that day a poem that references marketplaces in Israel. We might be using a lot of different senses and a lot of different things to get there. And then we also really focus and try and offer some space for cultural experiences and cultural outings. For Orthodox fellows, we are sensitive to the fact that the 5.5 weeks often fall during a period in the Jewish calendar where there are certain restrictions around hearing live music, around swim, and so we are very sensitive to how we set up the schedule so that no one has to choose between their observance and those kinds of experiences, but that still leaves us plenty of room for many unique and interesting experiences. So that was a little bit all over, but I wanted to give you a taste of some of that. And then Sammy or Mira, I suppose I'm going to just reframe the question and just say, like, how much did you find in the fellowship experience that you were able to have fun and relax in addition to the kind of thinking and learning that takes place?
I guess my answer would be that the two aren't really mutually exclusive. There definitely was, like Becky said, every morning, we have work with faculty and then different discussions. But I don't think that discussions ended when those sessions ended and then we just kind of were mindless. I think one thing that's special is like free time was filled with like wonderful conversations, and through that you build relationships, and through that you have fun. and I think that that's kind of largely self-selective of the group that ends up coming to Bronfman. Is, you know, we really enjoy those kind of intellectual, sometimes debates, but more like intellectual explorations. So I would say, you know, there was free time. There was definitely segmented time when, you know, we went hiking and did really fun, you know, classically fun things. But I think that those even were filled with a lot of great intellectual exploration.
Thanks, Sammy. And I just thought of the fact that another example, Sammy, you're an avid runner, and I know that in your summer, and this is often the case, you know, a lot of mornings you went running, sometimes with other fellows, and also sometimes with one of our faculty members who's an avid runner, or with one of the counselors from the summer. And those moments of both having the chance to move your body, but also still be in dialogue and connecting, I know, you know, that's also the kind of experience that often happens for fellows.
Yeah, that's a perfect example, Becky.
Great. We got one more question that came through via email, and it's a fun, lighter question about what kind of swag do we give out. And I'll take that question, and I'll just say, you know, that fellows have a few things. First, there's always, we have some notebooks that we give out, and we have the fellows themselves together design a T-shirt at the end of the summer, and that T-shirt is something that I will say fellows tend to treasure. There's also kind of this set of inside jokes usually inside the T-shirt that's fun. But in addition to that, what is something that fellows do receive when they first arrive in the program is really rich and interesting sets of source books with all of the materials and all of the learning that they're going to get to do in the fellowship. And our source book is usually double the size of what we're actually going to cover, but it's something that fellows can take home with them. And there's essays and poetry and traditional texts and a sort of world of ideas there that are inspiring. And in a lot of ways, that is something that I often hear from alumni over the years, that they go back to those sources, they go back to that set of resources, and they're really grateful for that set of new sets of ideas that come from the readings that we provide to fellows. And again, these are not assigned readings, these are not homework readings, but just kind of an addition almost to one's sort of mental library, and physically so as well. So that's a little quick answer to that. Other questions that people have, we're at 9:23, and we're very always sensitive to people's time. We will definitely conclude this call at 9:30.
I have a question.
Great.
Was that for me or?
Sure.
Oh, I think two people asked at the same time. Go ahead.
That's okay. Let's start with the person that said, was that for me? And then we'll go to the other person.
Okay. This is a question for Sammy and Mira. I'm wondering, or Becky, I'm wondering what type of cultural experiences you had of like dancing and singing and music and art and some of those other things. Comes from someone who's a dancer, but just what type of experiences you had with those, and then if those were incorporated into your free time and your interactions with the other fellows on the trip.
Sure, I can pop in. This is Mira. Really, the Bronfman Fellowship, everyone who, at least in my summer, had a lot of talent outside of their, Jewish school identity. And I remember many nights when people would bring out their instruments, and we would have these kind of informal singing, dancing sessions that were really a highlight for me. And we also, I think we did an acrobat kind of like group bonding activity that was very fun and challenging for me, but I really enjoyed it. And so I would say, yes, there is a lot of opportunity and space to like bring your talents, whether that's art or music or writing or dance, to the space. And we're very excited to have people to share those talents.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. I don't really have anything to add, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I would say, kind of joyous music making and movement that can happen informally in the group. And I think, as Mira and Sammy were sharing earlier, the atmosphere that we really hope to cultivate and that we work really hard to create is a space where fellows feel comfortable and connected with one another. And that's part of what allows people to bring out those talents. It's not for the sake of a talent show in the classic sense of like, let me show off my talent. It's very much more of a space for people to get to share what moves them. And then from a programming standpoint, as Mira noted, you know, there are things, different years we have different things. Some years we've had professional musicians that come in and lead a workshop. Sometimes that happens during the Mifkash. A lot of times, again, it depends on the time frame of the year for the Jewish holidays and for being sensitive to restrictions around that. We often work to bring in a filmmaker to show their work and talk about their work. You know, different filmmakers, different years. We usually try and utilize some of the things that are happening in Jerusalem during the summer. There's usually the Jerusalem season of culture in the summer that we try and go to some experiences. And yeah, you know, we really try and get a taste for culture in various ways. We often visit in Tel Aviv, an area where there's an interesting set of graffiti to explore. So yeah, thank you for that question. That's a good question.
And one thing I would just add, if I can jump in real quick, is if you do end up going to Israel, I would just say, like, ask your friends about their talents. Like, go out of your way to ask them, because people are crazy humble. Like a perfect example is one of my best buddies from Bronfman is like a crazy talented singer, and I didn't realize until like week 4 that he has like the voice of an angel, and it blew my mind like how humble he was. So, you know, people have amazing talents, and then they'll want to share it with you. I would just encourage you to not only be open, but ask people about, you know, things that they care about.
Thank you.
Thanks. There was someone else that wanted to ask a question at that earlier point.
Yes, hi.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, one, about the male to female ratio, and then number 2, could you just address how security and supervision works at the program?
Absolutely.
I'm almost done.
Yes, great questions. So generally, our male to female ratio is even, 13 to 13, or very close to that, depending on the year. There have been years where there are fellows who don't define as male or female, and we're also sensitive to those needs, and we really want to be as inclusive as we can for everyone. Supervision and security, that's an excellent question. So the fellows live on a campus that is in a secured 24-hour secured environment in Jerusalem. But in addition to that, we also have a full-time security person who lives with the group and who is trained and armed and with the group the whole time. As well as we have 2 of our older alumni who serve as counselors to the fellows and live on site with the fellows. Our educators, we relocate them to Israel for the summer, and they live in apartments nearby to where the fellows live and spend a lot of time with them. And so there's really always 3 adults right there all the time from a safety and also you know, physical and emotional security standpoint and health standpoint, who are really looking out for the fellows. And from a security standpoint, just to say another word, we have been extremely cautious and careful. This will be, as I noted, our 33rd year, and we have since 1987 been able to run the fellowship in Israel every single summer since '87, which there have been many summers where there have been challenging situations in Israeli security challenges, and we have worked very hard to pivot our program. Some years we've had to be in a different location in Israel in order to ensure our fellows' safety. Certainly on a day-to-day basis, we check in with the Israeli authorities. We have two points of contact through the Israeli authorities that we use every day to make sure that our entire itinerary and our routes that we're choosing for that day are fully secure. We have no hesitation about changing those things if we need to. We ensure that parents are allowed, not just allowed, but are kept in, that we keep in touch with parents and let parents know about those kinds of things. We have some very strict policies around no public transportation for fellows, even during the home stays, no travel over the green line, and several other things that have worked to really ensure the safety of our group. So we take that very seriously. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, so it is 9:30, and I'm gonna close us out with just two final thoughts, as well as some thank yous. From a thank you standpoint, I just want to really thank Mira and Sammy for joining us. This is the third year that we've done a call like this, and for whatever reason, we didn't think to ask alumni to join in the past, and I'm so glad that we did think to do so this evening, because having your voices and your experience, I think, really made this call much more informative. And to Ava for all of her hard work and for her sharing this evening as well. And to all of you who've joined us this evening, you know, we know that especially junior year is a busy time, and that's both for students and for parents and for their teachers and educators that work with them. So we really appreciate your taking this evening and this time to learn more about this program and to ask these questions that you've asked this evening. I did want to mention that for those who apply, even those who do not end up as Bronfman Fellows, if when you're in your application, if you choose to tick a little box on the application that says, please tell me about other programs, I would encourage you to do that, because there are several other wonderful, prestigious programs that accept the Bronfman application as an application to theirs, should you hear from us in January and find out that you are not invited to an interview. So that in itself already, you know, I think we really want to and recognize that there are so many wonderful young people, and we only wish that we had more slots for our program, but we want to really help you find opportunities that are meaningful for you in your journey. And that's something that we're committed to. We're also committed to offering feedback to folks after the application process is complete, if anyone wants to do so. And I think it can be very helpful towards college applications and other things to get that kind of feedback. And in the midst of your current application process, if you have questions and you'd like to speak to an alum, I know Mira offered herself, but we also have many other alumni that have said that they are very happy to speak to applicants who have questions, whether it's about the application itself or about the program. And so please don't hesitate to reach out to Ava with any kind of question, whether it's a technical question or whether it's something like that, to be connected to an alum. We really appreciate your time and your interest, and thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to your applications. So good night.